A world-renowned author, a futurist, and an engaging speaker with the ability to get people thinking beyond tomorrow. He spells out what it'll take for businesses to succeed in the knowledge-based economy of the future, providing a practical framework that is easy to comprehend. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage Mr. Ross Dawson as he talks about value creation in a connected world.
We are connected as never before in human history, and I believe this is the single thing that is driving the most value to humanity, have taken us forward the furthest in all of our endeavors. Yet it's a rapidly changing world, and amongst all we've already heard, the shift from voice to data. We're seeing the shift more and more to IP. We're seeing the whole shift now to smartphones. And this means that elements of what the economy has been, of what this world has been, have been shrinking and narrowing, commoditized, whereas others are opening up. So we need to look at how do we create value in the connected world which is so rapidly evolving for, absolutely, the citizens of India, for your organizations, for the communities, for these collaborations which we see between Ericsson and Cisco, which is fantastic. Now, if we look at the connected world, I think that what we can see is the birth of what we can think of as the global brain. The people on the planet, now that they have connectivity in their hands, in their pockets, are like the neurons in the brain. We are collectively becoming something beyond ourselves, something which is really participating in what is a higher order life form. And this is where value is created between us through this connectivity as we participate in this networks as they come to life. And at the same time, we're seeing one of the most fundamental shifts is a power to the individual from the institution. This happens from the organization to the customer. We're seeing that from governments to citizens. We're seeing that from institutional healthcare through to the patients. We're seeing that from employers through to employees. So in this connected world, we're seeing that power is flowing to the individual. And that is a lot of your mission. That is a lot of the value which you are creating. So this morning I want to look through just a few themes to help understand this creating value in this connected world. First, looking at connectivity, how expectations are increasing, thus changing structure of the economy in this world. Look at how this idea of the flow economy and the 6 elements of that world. Disruption and how that is coming to play, and transformation that is required in organizations. And finally, the leadership that you must demonstrate in order to be able to move forward, to be able to create value in this extraordinary world moving forward. So let's begin by looking at the world of connectivity, a world which you know well, and absolutely you're well aware of the massive rise in connectivity of the individual. And then we've seen already, it was just in 2008, when the iPhone 3G was released in around 14 developed countries in the world. There were just 200 million people on the planet who had access to broadband in their pockets. Today there are 3 billion people in the world. In the next 5 years there will be 3 billion more, of which 2 billion in Asia. And so this is this gift of connectivity going to the individual, and more, not just, this is all data connectivity and the explosion of the capabilities of how fast that is going. But it's not just individuals. Now is the next layer of every single thing around us. What did we drive? The things in our houses, everything that connects it. So this is a vast new explosion of the possibilities of connectivity where all of the things around us start to become connected in turn. And of course, the cloud is where the data resides. Now, however much storage we have in our pockets, we need to synchronize that between all of the devices we have in our home, where we travel, where we work. So this constant synchronization and resynchronization of applications, of data, of music, of videos, again, creating this exponential growth in what is required to be able to support this extraordinary connected world. Now, we've seen the rise of technology, but I believe that social change is as fast as technological change. And if we look at change in society today, the one fundamental driver is expectations. What we are seeing is that we expect more. On every single front, in every way that we can imagine, our expectations are rising. They're never going backwards. Our expectations are always going forward on every front. Absolutely, in terms of opportunity. And whilst there are several 100,000 people in India with over $10 million in assets, we're still seeing that there are many in India that are participating, and those that are still earning less than $1 a day. But what is changing? One of the things that is changing is that all of those people can now see that there is the possibility to be able to create better lives for themselves and for others. And this expectation and the seeing of the opportunity and the ability to rise that is a lot of what is creating the growth in the global economy moving forward, of which India arguably is at the forefront today. We expect immediacy. It was back in 1998 that the 56K modem came out, and where using dial-up you could download a web page in less than a minute. Now our expectations are rising faster and faster, where seconds can actually be too slow to be able to pull up a page on a mobile phone as we are going. Our expectations for immediacy are rising and never going back. 10 seconds, people are already gone a long time ago. We expect to participate. We expect to be part. We are not just subject to information, we are inside the information, we are creating information, we are sharing that. And I think one of the very interesting things to look at in a global context, so India and China, massive countries, India catching up, not that far away from overtaking China in population to be the most populous nation on the planet. Connectivity, in terms of the feature phones, very high, continuing to rise fast, and a larger and larger proportion of that being data, broadband based. But very interestingly, that India does not have the degree of social media participation that China does and a lot of the developed countries does. And I absolutely believe that this is something that's going to move incredibly fast over the next few years. And we've seen, if we look at it in a global context, we've seen this flows of uptake of social media. One of the very interesting trends just over the last 2 to 3 years that Latin America has come from behind to be now one of the dominant regions in the world in terms of participation in social media. And I believe that the social understanding Indian society and now getting this verge of the tantalizing way in which we get this pervasiveness of connectivity, I believe that social participation will absolutely explode in India. And there is this expectation that people are not just subject to information, but creating that. We have an expectation of choice in every aspect of our life, not just for what carriers to use, but how we use that, the interfaces, the ways in which we get our services managed for us. All of these choices being expressed in faster and faster and more ways. We expect beauty. And this is, we expect absolutely that things are functional, things are usable, they have, efficient interfaces, but I believe that it goes beyond that. We now have an expectation of beauty in the things that we receive. And this is going from even being driven by consumers and being forcing enterprise technology to now finally become beautiful after being ugly for so long. But all of this combines to what we can think of as this expectation of extraordinary experience, which is the sum total of absolutely every aspect of which touches you. And this is not just all of the customer service and the interactions and so on. It is every single thing that you experience every day in all the life and all of your time, that experience where people expect that to be getting better, to be extraordinary, to be exceptional, to be world-class at all times. Now, at the same time, the structure of the economy is fundamentally changing. You look at economists and they talk about how different industry sectors will grow or shrink, but they are entirely missing that the very nature of how value is created today is fundamentally changing. And that is driven by the rise of networks. We've already seen how our brains are networks. We understand the technologies networks. We can see that social networks in which we are all connected. We understand now that organizations are networked. And in fact, at all layers of our lives, the networks are rising. What we are seeing that now the economy is shifting to be a network. And these scale-free networks, these all have the same topology, the same structure, whether they be small or large. The whole structure of the internet is exactly the same as it was 20 years ago, except larger. It has not changed in terms of the structure, all of the relationships, the dynamics. It has only changed in terms of size. So what we are seeing now is that these networks, these scale-free networks, are growing but maintaining the same structure. And what that means, amongst other things, is that you have winners and you have losers. And in this network economy, we're seeing more and more the rise of platforms where we are seeing that a smaller number of players are being able to attract the largest proportion of the value. But in this world, where we're individual nodes of players, we are shifting to an economy of individuals. So the unit of value creation in the economy is no longer the organization, it's no longer the company. The unit of value creation in the economy is the individual. As they are connected, as they are able to share and create value, as we've started to see where a little while ago now, we started to see the first phones going into villages, being able to be rented out in one stroke, in one moment, creating a livelihood for a person and connecting an entire village. And I think in India, perhaps more than in any country in the world, this is already this economy of individuals. India has already been started from that premise and is growing and growing, and now we are connected on top of this. This economy of individuals becoming real and is able to explode in terms of the value that it can create. Now, the sharing economy is a big theme. We've seen a whole lot of marketplaces rises, where we've seen, of course, not that long ago coming into India, Uber and Airbnb and local competitors such as RentShare and so on, where there's things where these marketplaces, where these individuals, those that are able to supply something of some time, some energy, some labor, some ideas, some cash, together with connecting them with those that need it. At the same time, this idea of how do we bring those many things together to be able to create something which is more than the sum of the parts of the individuals. And it's again, I think that what I see that in India, there's really been fairly early on in terms of the sharing economy. There's a lot of discussion around that. But as we see the foreign players coming in, I think that the mentality overlaid with the exploding connectivity in India provides this extraordinary opportunity to create this economy of individuals and bring it to life in this crowds and sharing economy landscape. So when we look at the connected world, back in my book, Living Networks, I described what I call the flow economy. Now, we look at any offer that comes to somebody, it is essentially composed of all of these things that are connected. Anything where there is not a physical thing, such as a product or thing, every other element of the offer, you could describe this idea of the flow economy. I'd just like to run through the 6 elements of the flow economy, because this describes so much of where we can find value in this emerging world. The first underlying element is that of standards. And just of the many, many standards that enable us today, Ericsson gave a gift of Bluetooth to the entire world. It owned it, it gave it away to be able to provide that as a standard enabling value to everyone. Second key element is that of connectivity. The ability to connect. And of course, in the flow economy, connectivity is a fundamental enabler. By itself, though, it can often be a commodity. And as it is combined with the other element is where it creates value. Interfaces, and arguably a phone is an interface to the flow economy. A set-top box on a TV is an interface to the flow economy. We can have, in fact, a kiosk as an interface. So all of these are the interfaces, often, or browsers, for example, are again interfaces which capture part of that value. Content. And of course, in a connected world, this content is growing in value. Advertising has gradually been marginalized in a pure form, but content, with our appetite, and I think we are discovering about humans that our appetite for content, for quality entertainment, for quality information, is insatiable. And so this no more and more is, as humans have finite attention spans, and in a world of exploding content, exploding information, exploding entertainment, only the very best will actually attract people's attention. So this is a field of competition, but one of extraordinary value, which can draw people to some of these other elements. Services. And this is, of course, one of the key topics of today. And there's many layers to the service. The services that enable everything else to happen. The services that enable connectivity. The services that support the interface. The services that support content. But also the services that support services. The ones which are part of the offers to your customers, where they are not just buying content, and this is where an extraordinary amount of the value becomes. Once you control that interface, once you're able to control the customer, that's when you can bring in services. And finally, and critically, relationships. And that's where the true value resides, and where you can start to move, where you say, well, if we have an interface, how do we create a relationship from that? From our content, how do we create a relationship from that? And from the relationships, how do we then pull all of the other elements together? So a strategy, for every strategy, you need to say, what is our customer buying? Who is providing each of those elements? And it's almost never one single company. You're always working with others, sometimes in informal collaborations, sometimes is the very fact that it's simply different companies providing different elements of that. And then, so the next phase of variable think for that is, how can we move from where we currently are to be able to take some of those other elements of the flow economy? And just to give a couple of examples, we have Jamii Telecom in Kenya using fiber TV, where it's moved to be able to have a connectivity interface to provide a TV set-top box. It becomes an interface player, and it also becomes a content player in providing all of the TV streaming to its customers. We're seeing Telefonica, which is in its Thinking Things service. What it is, it provides these devices which you can simply literally stick together. They are connected. They provide information in the world about them. And so you can create your Internet of Things home in just a few small building blocks that you can pull together yourselves. So becoming a player from that connectivity to be able to participate in many elements in terms of the interfaces, in terms of the services, and then linking those elements of connectivity, for example, buying things, communicating, content, in a whole variety of guises. So this all creates a world of disruption, where the world of the old is being pushed away to be able to create new pathways. I think when we look at the economy globally, one of the most fundamental things that we can see is the divergence in performance between the best performing organizations and the least performing organizations. And essentially what we're seeing is that those organizations that are staying the same while the world is changing are falling down, whereas those organizations that are changing as and seeing all of the changes opportunities are moving forward. And we can see that in some data from the EU showing the gap between the best productivity firms and the least performing productivities, and a growing divergence between the best and the least performing organizations. So disruption, is in the classic theory, it's about those things which are start off being not as good as any other offers, but because they've created in a different way, because there is a different price point, they're eventually able to get the critical mass, get the network effects of the broader participation to be able to break through and absolutely move out what has already been an existing disruption. So, just one illustration which we've all seen and experienced over the years was that of moving from still cameras to digital cameras. And of course, these have in turn been supplanted by digital cameras through to phones, the cameras on the phones. Now, if you look at, say, 2001, still the vast bulk of the industry was in traditional markets, yet the transformation was really rapid from there. And so this is where organizations need to be sensitized to those things can actually dramatically shift where they are and the new things coming. And there's an extraordinary array of not just new technologies, but new ways in which services are being provided to be able to do that. So organizations need to learn how to continually transform themselves, to go from the old to be able to come out and be born anew. There is a race at all times. So the Red Queen in Alice in Wonderland had to run as fast as she could in order to stay the same place. And that is pretty much the state of business today. We need to be able to continue to be running in order simply to be able to stay pace with all of the others. All of your competitors, both direct competitors and those who are providing similar value through other streams, are moving ahead at an extraordinary pace. And now the race is, how do you push yourself even further ahead? And I think fundamentally the answer is in networks. To be a high-performance organization today, to be a high-performance organization in 5 years from now, you must be an extraordinarily well-networked organization, where you're able to bring the right capability, experience, relationship, background inside your organization to where there is the challenge or the opportunity, ad hoc, real time, moving beyond the classic traditional structure, so we have the vitality and the dynamism of that organization. But also it's around the networks that extend beyond, to be able to look for the ideas, the possibilities, the capabilities beyond your organization to be able to bring those inside you. Now, a Mobius strip is when you get a strip of paper, you turn it once and you join it together, and then that piece of paper only has one side. The three-dimensional analogy, equivalent of that, is the Klein bottle. The inside and the outside is the same. And I think that's an extraordinarily powerful metaphor for organizations today. The way in which you interface with your customers, or the world large, needs to absolutely mirror and be integrated with the way you work internally. And so this is a challenge where both you need to be able to be very effective internally as a networked high-performance organization and have the right culture and connections and idea flow of ideas internally, but also be able to keep that tied and integrated and in sync with the ways in which you are using the networks to be able to drive value for your customers externally. So it's around how do you create value with your customers? And for example, with Nike ID, where their customers are helping to design the actual Nike shoes and then sell them and perhaps participate in that value creation. It's just one example of how we are seeing that value creation is with customers. You're not creating something and then selling it. Your customers are actually participating in creating value, in creating the products, in being able to push those out into the marketplace. You know, the great example in the telco world is that of giffgaff in the United Kingdom, where all of the sales, of the marketing, of the customer service is done by the customers. So these are basically forms. They participate, and in order for their participation in helping do the customer service for the other customers, being able to sell and to market that, they are rewarded either in minutes, in dollars, or in contributions to charity. And in fact, recently, giffgaff was noted one of the top customer service organizations in the United Kingdom, one where the service is provided by the customers themselves. So this is the crowds and the sharing economy as written as an organization, in a high-performance organization. So finally, looking at leadership. And leadership is required in order to be able to seize the value in this world, because the law of requisite variety tells that only those individuals and organizations that are as flexible as their environment actually have any choice at all. Otherwise, you're simply buffeted by the winds of change instead of being able to take a lead and to shape the world around you. And that's deeply challenging, given the extent of change in the world around us. So now we must create unique organizations. Andrew McAfee at MIT, author of, amongst other things, Race Against the Machine, said in an event that I organized a little while ago, he said that what he sees is that all organizations are becoming more and more different. Back in the old days, companies used to have the same processes, the same structures, the same ways of working, and they looked more and more similar to the customers. Yet now we are seeing the potential for the merging of technology and culture and history of an organization to create something that is absolutely unique. And that is not just an opportunity, it's also an imperative to be able to create an organization which is absolutely distinctive, which is absolutely unique, which cannot be copied by any others, however much they look at it, because they're not able to embody what it is. And in this connected world of today, there are amazing opportunities to create things which are not just unique, but are things that have never been done before in terms of how value is created, putting together the different elements of the flow economy, the different pieces that create value in a connected world. Joseph Campbell was a comparative mythologist, and he studied cultures and societies all around the world. And what he found was that in every culture, there was a common story, what he called the hero's journey. Every race tells the same story, and what it is if a person who is called beyond their everyday life to something that is beyond them, to be able to go forth, to encounter many challenges as well as many helpers along the way, to get something as of value and to bring that back for their community. And I believe we are now the extraordinary challenge. We must all hear the call to go beyond what it is we do, to be able to create, because what you are doing, as we've already heard this morning, what you are doing is creating exceptional value for India, for its citizens, for India in the global economy. This is where in the connected world, the possibilities truly are, and to be able to create new things that have never been created before, and to be able to bring those back for all of us to benefit from. So I've looked at connectivity as the underlying things, increasing expectations driving the shape of all services that are provided. Changing structure of the world, this idea of the flow economy with the 6 different elements, disruption, transformation required of organizations, and finally the leadership required to create it. But I think you'll agree with me, the opportunities are absolutely going to explode. And I invite you to seize those opportunities and create an extraordinary future in the connected world of India. Thank you.